Hello, everybody, and welcome. Really wonderful to see you here. I'd love to start by just asking you where you're calling in from. So please, if you can share in the chat. Poland, Boulder, Colorado, Albania, UK, Mexico, London, Chile, Israel, Brazil, Greece, Chile, Guatemala, Mexico. Wow. Brussels,
Toronto,
Colombia, Toronto. Amazing. Argentina, Israel, incredible. So it's great to be here with you from wherever you are and whenever you are, different time zones, of course. We have quite a topic today, a very difficult question that we're going to discuss. So here is what today is going to look like. So I'm going to start by answering the question, can love and lust last? Or are we just doomed to, the honeymoon effect, essentially? So I'll start there. After that, I'm going to invite Yuval Kutz, who's the president of the Happiness Studies Academy, to talk about what the Happiness Studies Academy can offer in terms of the certificate in happiness studies, other programs that we have. And then Yuval and I will be here for your questions, and you can ask questions about the topic that I'll be speaking about, can love and lust last? And as well as the questions about the certificate program that we're actually starting today. It's launching as we speak. Or any other question about Happiness Studies Academy, about the happiness studies, any topic that comes to mind. All right, but let me start with this question. This is a very important and difficult question. And as I try to answer it, can love and lust last? I'm reminded of an interview that Professor Martin Seligman, who's considered the father of the field of positive psychology, a question that he was asked when he was interviewed for CNN back in the very late 90s, when he just founded the field of positive psychology. And he was asked by the interviewer, so Professor Seligman, in your sense, psychologically, what is the state of the world? In other words, how are we doing when it comes to happiness, to positive psychology? And Seligman said, well, in one word, good. In two words, not good. And I have a similar answer to the question, can lust and love last? And my answer is, in one word, yes, it can. But if I had to put it in more than one word, then yes, and it's very difficult and very challenging, and it takes work. And I want to elaborate a little bit on the second part of my answer, on what it actually takes. Because the answer is yes, but what does it take to make love and lust last? And I want to begin with a sort of a thought experiment that I'd like you to participate in. I'm a psychologist. I like experiments. This one doesn't hurt. At least I hope it doesn't. So here is what I'd like you to imagine. Imagine that your wildest dream has come true. You have just met your absolute perfect match. You found a person who looks like your ideal man or woman. It could be, your Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, or whomever it is for you. You found your ideal man or woman. And you find out more about them, and you realize that they don't just look amazing. They're not just drop dead gorgeous and sexy and everything you've ever wanted. They're also incredibly intelligent, and they are nice. They're generous. They're kind. They're really good-hearted. They have all the values that you've always looked for in a partner. And to top it all off, they're head over heels, madly in love with you. So you have found this person, this ideal person in every respect, physically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, and madly in love with you. And assuming you're not in a relationship, they are certainly not in a relationship because they were waiting for you. You get together. And you know what? When you make love, it's incredible. Better than you had ever imagined. So everything is just right, perfect. And of course, you commit to one another, either marriage or a committed relationship. Your dream, wildest dream, just came true. And then you live happily together, and you're together for a year, 3 years go by, and after 5 years, a psychologist comes to you and says, a psychologist comes to you and says, I'd love to run an experiment. Will you participate? And you say, sure. And here is the experiment. You're sitting in a room hooked up to all these electrodes that actually measure your level of passion, your level of arousal. And your beloved partner comes in dressed to the nines, beautifully dressed, comes into the room. And what the psychologist is measuring is how passionate, how aroused you are seeing your beautiful, gorgeous, perfect partner. And then your partner leaves and another person comes in, a person who's moderately attractive, more or less your type, not perfect, but moderately attractive. And once again, the psychologist measures your level of arousal. And then that person leaves and the psychologist hands you the results of this study. Who physically, physiologically, are you more attracted to? Your beloved partner, your perfect partner that you've been with for 5 years, or this person you've never met before, but just, walks into the room? The answer is, just about in every case, you're more physically aroused, more physically attracted at that moment to the person you have never met before. There's been a lot of studies on it. Most people don't need studies because we know that. But research, for example, by Daryl Bem from Cornell University talks about how the exotic is erotic. In other words, the new, the novel, the different is more erotic to us. We're more attracted to it. So Houston, we have a problem as far as monogamous relationships are concerned. Why? Because physiologically, biologically, naturally, we're more attracted to the new, to the different. So what does this say about monogamous, long-term, committed relationship? What does it say about the question, can love and lust last? Is the answer no, perhaps? Because biologically, physiologically, we are more attracted to the new, to the exotic, to the novel, to the unfamiliar. So here is the thing. This is indeed the case, and that's why we see so many relationships fail, flounder. This is why so many people get divorced after the honeymoon phase is over, whether it's after 4 years when you see a real spike, up to 7 years, or sometimes after 10 or 20 years. And many couples, when they break up, what do they talk about? They say, well, I'm just not attracted to this person, or they find someone else they're more attracted to. And part of it is part of our nature. At the same time, there are relationships out there, and you may know them, you may be part of one of them, where the couples have been together for 5 years or 10 years or 30 years. And they're still very much attracted to one another. And their love life is amazing. There are such examples. They're not the majority, unfortunately. However, they're there, they exist. And given that they exist, the question is no longer, can love and lust last? But rather, how can we make it last? And this is the question that I want to address in just a few minutes now, and give you a few ideas, a few research findings from the field of happiness studies. So, remember my answer to the question, can love and lust last? Yes, and it takes work. And this is the first thing that I want to talk about a little bit. It takes work. You know, there is a misconception, a misunderstanding about what healthy long-term relationships are all about. We believe that we need to fall in love, we're attracted to our partner, we get married, and then we live happily ever after. This is, after all, what the movies tell us we need to do. Because in the movie, we see, couple, there's of course tension, and they're not together, and they are together. And at the end, they do get together, they kiss, they make love, and the screen drops. And the assumption is, just like in the fairy tales, they live happily ever after. The problem is that love begins where movies end. Love begins where movies end. It's when movies end, when they get together, this is where the real work begins. And it's hard work. Now, imagine the following. Imagine that for years you have been looking for your ideal job, and you've looked far and wide, and finally, after years of searching, you found it. The work of your dreams. It's meaningful. You're passionate about it. It's exactly what you've always wanted to do. And you start, and then Monday morning, work starts, and you come into your new office, and you sit down on your beautiful new chair in front of the beautiful view out of your window. You put your legs up on the table, and you chill. I found it. I found my ideal job. Wow, that's amazing. I'm so happy. I love my new job. And you just sit there and revel in this amazing find that you found a job that you love and you're passionate about. And that's it. Now, what happens? You'll lose that job. You'll be fired within a day if you do nothing. But that's not what we do when we find our ideal job. When we find that job, that's when we start working really hard. That's when we start investing in the work, in ourselves, because we're passionate about it. And yet when it comes to relationship, there is a double standard. It's when you find it, that's when you stop investing. That's what happens with so many relationships. And that's the number one mistake that leads to love and lust disappearing. Because if we don't work at it, if we don't invest in our relationship, it will not last. It will not persist. The passion, the intimacy will dissipate. And again, it could take a month or it could take 3 years, but it will go away. It will disappear. So the first thing that I want to emphasize is the importance of hard work. Now, the question is, what does this hard work look like? And I want to talk about specifically two things. The first thing has to do with a conflict that inevitably arises in relationships. I want to talk about the work of David Schnarch, S-C-H-N-A-R-C-H, who passed away a year ago. And David Schnarch wrote a book which I highly recommend for all those either in or interested in a long-term committed relationship. The name of his book is Passionate Marriage. Not just about marriage, about any long-term committed relationship. Passionate Marriage. And David Schnarch talks about how in every relationship, no exception. We always get to a gridlock. Every relationship, no exception, we always get to a gridlock. What is a gridlock? A gridlock is a conflict within the relationship, but not your usual conflict where you fight, you disagree, you make up, you make love, and then everything is great again. No, he talks about the gridlock is a real conflict where you are disagreeing about something that is very fundamental, very deep, very important, very valuable for both partners, and they disagree on it. And that poses a real problem, because until that point, if it's your first gridlock, you thought you were great, perfect for each other. And suddenly you realize that you're very different on such a fundamental issue. Now, usually a gridlock, that very deep, meaningful conflict, revolves around one of four issues. One of four, it could be two, it could be all four, but at least one of four. But it could also be something different. It's usually around one of them. The first thing is around money. How much should we save? How much can we spend? We're spending too much, too little. What do we do with our money? I'm working the job that brings enough, that doesn't. There are money issues in many relationships, and that often leads to a gridlock. Not in every relationship, in some. Second topic for gridlock is around children, specifically around education. You're too harsh, you're not harsh enough, we should send them to this school, to that school. These are conflicts in every relationship. Sometimes it becomes a serious conflict, serious disagreement, and then it could become a gridlock. So the first one is around money, second around education. The third one around sex. How much? How little? We're having sex too many times, too few times. I want this kind of sex, that kind of sex, polygamous, monogamous. These are all topics that come up in relationships, not during the honeymoon, but subsequently. And they often lead to a gridlock. We're stuck. The fourth topic is in-laws, or more generally, the extended family. How often should we see the in-laws? We should see, once a week, never. How much time should we spend with the extended family? And these, how important are they in our life? Should we live close to them, far away? These are all issues in many relationships. So these four topics usually provide a gridlock. Now, when a gridlock happens, and here is the thing, it always happens in every long-term relationship, unavoidable. When a gridlock happens, and it could happen after 4 years, it could happen after 7 years, but it will happen. When a gridlock happens, one of three things are possible. The first thing is the relationship ends. I thought we were right for each other, but apparently we're not. It means that we need to move on to another relationship. But you know what? In that new relationship, the gridlock will take place as well. But that's one option, the dissolution, the end of the relationship. And in today's world, where divorce is a real option, that happens often. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean, okay, I'll get to that doesn't mean in a minute. So one option, end of relationship. Option number two, we stay together, but we're not really together. Meaning, we still live under the same roof, we're still married, but we're not really together anymore. We don't talk that much, we're not intimate. Certainly not as we were before. So it's the end of the relationship, but not officially. Why do we stay together? Well, maybe we stay together because of the kids, or for financial reasons, or religious reasons, or because we don't think there is a better option out there, whatever. We're not really together anymore. Option number three, we go through the gridlock. We disagree, we argue, we fight, we lock horns. And then somehow after a month or 3 months, we emerge on the other side. Now, what's on the other side? The other side is development, growth. On the other side, there is learning. There is personal growth and interpersonal growth. It happens when we hold on to our values, to ourselves, and we hold on to the relationship. We don't give up on ourselves and we don't give up on the relationship. And then as a result of this tension between self and other, this is what Peter Senge calls creative tension. As a result of this tension emerges a stronger, better self and a stronger, better relationship. Now, it's anything but easy, that process. But it happens, it takes place, and the couples emerge better off, more intimate, more in love, and more in lust as a result of this gridlock. Now, going back to what I started saying earlier, this doesn't mean that in every relationship it can happen. This doesn't mean that every relationship facing a gridlock needs to resolve it and grow from it. Sometimes divorce, separation, may be the right approach, maybe the right thing to do. Maybe there are just, really conflicting values. And at the beginning, it was just, pure lust and I was blind, because love sometimes is blind. But in more cases than not, a gridlock is an opportunity for growth rather than the beginning of the end. And the important thing is for us to recognize it and to know it and to give it a chance. Again, unless there is a real violation of certain values that we're not willing to compromise on at all. I remember reading David Schnarch, and what a relief it was for me knowing about the gridlock, because my wife and I, we'd been together since the age of 14. We're high school sweethearts. And we were sure that, we were meant for one another. And then we faced a gridlock. And what does that suddenly mean? That we were mistaken? But then reading Schnarch brought about real relief, because again, what he says, what he shows is that gridlock is inevitable. It happens in every relationship, no matter what a great match you are. And then you have the three options: separate, remain together as separate, or work through it. This is the natural evolution of healthy relationships. And once again, it's inevitable. And it leads to higher levels of lust, intimacy, and love. So this is hard work. But in your dream job, you work hard as well. Hard work also takes a slightly different form to a gridlock, a more general form, which a gridlock is a subgroup of. And that is, again, in the words of David Schnarch, knowing and being known. Most relationship experts would tell you that, within a relationship, what's most important is to validate and to be validated by your partner. Give positive feedback, tell them how wonderful they are, how amazing, how much you care about them. Now, not belittling that, it is important. Mark Twain said, I can live for 2 weeks of a good compliment. So complimenting your partner, of course, is important, and we feel good about being complimented. However, what David Schnarch points out is that it's not the most important thing. The most important thing within a relationship is not complimenting and being complimented, validating and being validated. Rather, what it is, it's knowing and being known. It's really, really it's really about getting to know your partner. It's really about your partner knowing you. And what does that mean? Knowing your values, of course, and a gridlock helps there. Knowing your fears, knowing what's important to you, knowing your sexual fantasies, knowing your goals, knowing who you are deep inside, and for you to know them, knowing where you like to be touched and knowing where you like to go out. And as couples know each other more and more, and that takes time, you don't get to know, hopefully you don't get to know someone fully on the first date. It takes years, and over years, you feel more and more comfortable opening up, being known. And then over time, intimacy grows, and therefore over time, love and lust grows. This is what happens in the best relationships. They're not the majority of relationships by definition. They're the best relationships where love and lust does last. And we can learn from it by going through gridlocks, by over time knowing and being known. But that takes work, it takes effort, it takes commitment to one another and to oneself. I'm going to stop here and move on to Yuval Kutz. I'm happy to answer more questions about it. Again, I recommended a book by David Schnarch, Passionate Marriage. Also books by John Gottman talk about the importance of conflict, the importance of creating love maps, knowing more about your partner. And these are some of the things that we go into much greater depth as part of the certificate in happiness studies. And now I want to share with you a quick video by Yuval Kutz, the president of the Happiness Studies Academy. And then both Yuval and I will come back and answer your questions about any and all topics. So if you can have the video now.
Hi everyone. The Certificate in Happiness Studies is a year-long program. The program is offered in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Japanese, Chinese, and Hebrew. It is composed of 2 parts, both about the same length. The first is called Introduction to Happiness Studies, and the second is called Facilitating Happiness. While the first part focuses on theory, although it has some practice in it, the second part relies more about applied techniques, although it has some theory in it. This is an interdisciplinary journey in which we will learn the relationship between not just positive psychology, but also literature, art, science, and other fields related to happiness. The entire program has a weekly structure with the following components. First of all students in the same cohort starts off at the same day. And every week you receive access to 4 15 minutes pre-recorded lectures. Altogether, 1 hour. All of the lectures are delivered by Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. You can watch these lectures at your convenience. It's online, and they will always be available for you to go back and watch again. Every week, students are invited to join a 1-hour live webinar with Tal, in which they can discuss happiness, the topics of the course, and their personal lives directly with Tal. Last but not least, all students get access to their personal life journal. The life journal is a weekly follow-up to the lessons with additional exercises, extra readings, videos, journaling, meditations, yoga, and much more. The life journal is divided into 3 depth categories. The first category is called GEM, G-E-M, which stands for Good Enough Mark. The second category is GEM Plus, and the third one is GEM Plus Plus. In order to earn the Certificate in Happiness Studies, you are required to go through the GEM category, which will take you about 2 hours a week, in addition to the 1-hour lecture. You can always go back and drill down to any of the subjects with the GEM Plus and the GEM Plus Plus. This could take you a lifetime. Speaking of lifetime, you get lifetime access to this life journal, which holds the most comprehensive bibliography of research and material about happiness out there today. Actually, you're getting lifetime access to us as well. As HSA alums, you will get your Certified Happiness Trainer certificate, invitations to our annual gatherings, support from HSA faculty and the entire community. Additionally, we prepared a ready-made short course for our graduates containing suggested exercises and videos. The course was designed specifically for our graduates to collaborate with HSA and deliver it in any way that they choose. It is extremely important for us to give you all the tools needed to pursue a career and work in this field. I would like to thank you for taking the time today and for the interest you're showing in this program.
Thank you, Yuval. How are you?
Hi everyone. Hi Tal. Actually, I'm great. The video was a little bit with a delay, so maybe in a few minutes I'll walk through a few of the items that were on the video so that everything will be understood. I'm still thinking about the gridlocks I went through with my wife throughout the years. So you know,
we all have them. We all have them. Yeah.
You put me in the mind loop of you know. So I'm happy to be here. Happy to see all of you from all over the world. It's really always exciting. This is the 14th cohort that we're opening of the Certificate in Happiness Studies. It actually opened today and still will be open for you to register in the coming days. It is a weekly structure, as I mentioned, so you're not missing out on anything that are open today. You have a whole week to do your exercises and to go through the pre-recorded lectures and to join the live sessions. So it's not too late to join, although today is the official opening date of the 14th cohort, October 2022 cohort of the Certificate in Happiness Studies. If you have any questions about the topic that Tal just talked about, or about the Certificate in Happiness Studies, or whatever you want, please raise your hand. You have that under reactions, raise hand, and we'll take your questions, or you can write them in the chat and we'll take the questions from the chat.
Okay, we have a hand, Yuval.
Please take it.
Hi, Denise.
Hi, Tal. So good to be here at midnight in Israel. I think that you might want to add just a suggestion, one more gridlock: professional women living with professional men and our accomplishments, and how that sometimes affects a marriage when one, especially the woman in today's day and age, because men are used to traveling more for conferences, or used to some accomplishments that are always, you know, complimented by their wives. But I personally have a partner that is very, very complimentary, but the only gridlocks, we're married 36 years, that we've ever had, it's a little bit of competition with my profession and his profession, and that's a gridlock. That could be a big gridlock. None of the others, thank God.
Yeah.
But yes, that is definitely in today's world where it's two people working, professional people working and having accomplishments and having praise by the outside world, perhaps is threatening to a man. And that could be a gridlock. So it's been a lot of conversation and walking through that. But yeah, it's just interesting, your take on that.
Yeah. First of all, fascinating. And you know, just in fairness to David Schnarch, he said that these four are the most common ones. He didn't say they're the only ones.
Sure.
Yeah, what you described, first of all, obviously it's real to you.
Yes.
But I'm sure it's not foreign to, you know, I'm sure you're not the only couple who's going through gridlocks of that nature. And you know, Denise, when you talked about it, and it made me think of something else that we teach as part of our certificate program, and that is the idea of, what do you do with emotions when they arise? Unpleasant emotions, that is, an emotion like envy or jealousy, and especially if it's envy or jealousy towards your loved one,
Right.
your partner. I remember experiencing jealousy after my son was born. And I experienced jealousy towards him because suddenly he was getting more attention than I was, no matter how much I cried. And what do you do with that? I'm not the kind of person who should be envious of my son or my partner. Is obviously something that goes through our mind. The point here, and this is again what we talk about a lot as part of our program, is that emotions, painful emotions, are such as envy or sadness or anxiety, are natural part of life. And just as David Schnarch talks about a gridlock that's inevitable, painful emotions are also inevitable. And then the question becomes not whether or not we'll experience them, not whether or not we'll experience a gridlock, not whether or not we'll experience envy. And again, it could be to a partner, child, or a friend. The question is, what do we do with it when it arises? And when it comes to a gridlock, again, David Schnartz elaborates and talks about how we need to go through it and hold on to ourselves and hold on to the other. When it comes to painful emotion, what we talk about and what we teach is the idea of giving ourselves the permission to be human, giving ourselves the permission to experience the full range of human emotions, whether it's envy, whether it's sadness, whether it's anxiety, whether it's anger. And paradoxically, when we give ourselves the permission to be human, we have most control over our action. Because when we reject the painful emotion, it's much more likely to control us. So I can experience envy towards a loved one, observe it, experience it, accept it, and then choose the most appropriate course of action. And the most appropriate course of action can be to talk about it, or regardless, to support my partner or child or best friend in their endeavor and to help them succeed even more. I can experience the envy and still be supportive of them. So emotions and behaviors are separate. But I just had to say, because Denise, you brought up the idea of envy, which again, natural human emotion, we all experience it. The question is, what do we do with it? Same as a gridlock, we all experience it within a relationship. The question is, what do we do with it?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Now, I see that we have Sandy Mora here with us. Sandy, to all of you, the Certificate in Happiness Studies is an online program. While being an online program, we're trying to invest very hard on the community and the relationships between students and the alumni. And we're trying to have some physical get-together as possible wherever Tal travels worldwide. He gets to meet students and alumni of the Certificate in Happiness Studies. And we're holding annual retreats. Well, actually, it's becoming biannual, twice a year retreats. We're having one in Mexico a few weeks from now, and we have another one in Italy in March, where we get to meet a lot of our students, hundreds of them. We have thousands of students now from more than 70 countries. So Sandy is here, and Sandy is managing the HSA Alumni and Business Club. And I think she can talk a little bit about their experience as a student, as an alumni, and a little bit about the club and what to expect while joining us. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, thank you, Yuval. Hi, Tal.
Hi, Sandy.
Hey, well, just wanted to jump in and to let you know that when you become an HSA student, you are immediately part of the HSA Alumni and Business Club. So, what is the club? The club is it was created by students for the student community. So we're a team, right now we're about 20 volunteers from the students and graduates from all over the world that wanted to create this space to generate a more, a bigger sense of community, to connect to each other, to, you know, help each other in the journey, to help also people who are wanting to build a business around what they learn in this course. So we are, some of us are, you know, way ahead, some of us are way behind. So the idea is to help each other, to connect and to have this sense of a student and alumni community, even though we're apart in different parts of the world. And I can tell you, we've been working a little bit more than a year, and we launched the club in January, and the response and the connections that we are able to make and the friendships that are being built are invaluable. So I just wanted to let you know that this is part of what you get when you become an HSA student, and you get this global community, this global tribe, because most of us, when we got to meet in person, we were like, wow, this is my tribe. I really belong here. So just wanted to let you know that this is part of what you can get when you become an HSA student. Thank you so much.
Sandy, usually we do this talk with newcomers, with new students just joining the certificate, and then you tell them about the club. This is the first time that we're calling you on a meeting that of, you know, we have about 150 people here that are hopefully will join this journey together. So you get to meet them beforehand. It's the first time we do that. So thank you for joining.
Thank you, Sandy. And Yuval, I want to say just a few words about the club. So, you know, Sandy mentioned that it was created by students, all their initiative, and it's run by the students, and or we address them as fellow journeyers. And the reason why we are so excited about it is because, you know, when we started the Happiness Studies Academy, we had to make a choice. And the choice was, is this going to remain an online, or is it going to be an online academy, or is it going to be in person? And of course, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. So, you know, there's no substitute for, you know, meeting in person or being in the same classroom. At the same time, if it is in person, we're limiting its reach, and we couldn't have students from, you know, from Chile and Brazil and Vietnam and Saudi Arabia and Israel and China, and we have students from over 70 countries. So we decided to do it online, but we wanted to find a way of not foregoing the benefits of meeting in person, and that's where the club came in. What the club does is ensure that we meet in person around the world. So, you know, I travel a lot. So wherever I go, you know, I meet fellow journeyers. You know, last week I was in Evian, so I met students from France and Switzerland. And you know, next week we have a retreat or 3 weeks' time we have a retreat in Mexico, and the following month in Madrid. And we had one in Australia just a couple of months ago, and the students themselves meet as well, just based on their geography. So we have a lot of these face-to-face interactions, which are invaluable as far as we're concerned in terms of our work. So thank you, Sandy, for doing what you're doing.
Tal, we have a hand from Cynthia.
Cynthia.
Hi, first, my name is Andrea. I'm with my friend's link. Then I want to make sure that my name is Andrea. Then if I do a wrong question, I will take not she. My question is about the gridlock, because I'm thinking about the studies. We have two persons, right? And they are going to arrive to the same point, to the gridlock. And they come from different, well, they are different. They deal with life in a different way. And my point is, if they arrive to the same point, if has research showing how many are going to fail and why they fail. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we don't have research on how many gridlocks actually are resolved versus not, other than, we have divorce rates, obviously, but so many relationships that, where things seem to be going great are not doing well, or where things seem to be, quite sleepy, but actually, they have an amazing life together. So it's very difficult to get actual numbers, but based on divorce rates, we know the situation is not great, right? Because they're rising, certainly in places where it's legitimized by the culture. But what distinguishes those that succeed from those who don't? Two main things. The first thing is, what is the gridlock around? Because, getting to, being in an abusive relationship, you get to a gridlock event, hopefully, actually, where the person who's being abused says, no more. And then, arguably, in most, if not all cases, the best way is out. Rather, okay, let's resolve this. And an abusive relationship, I think, there is too much of a gap in terms of values, not to mention the fact that it's immoral. So the kind of gridlock matters. If I want to send, our kids to a Montessori school, and my wife, wants to send the kids to a traditional school, that could lead to a gridlock. But we still have our child's best intent, our intention is good. We have their best interest at heart. Very different from, gridlock around abuse, obviously. So the question is, what is the gridlock around? But assuming that the gridlock is around something which is solvable, then the difference is, do the couples hold on, does each one hold on to their value and to their relationship or not? And both are essential, because a person who doesn't hold on to his or her values will compromise, will develop resentment. This is not the path to intimacy and to long-term successful relationship. A person who doesn't hold on to the relationship will just give up and say, well, we're just not meant to be together. So you need to hold on to both. And again, they seem irreconcilable because they seem, well, it's either this or that. But and again, this is a topic we talk about a lot in the course. This is not about this or that. It can be about this and that. And we talk about work by Collins and Porras, who are from Stanford originally, who talk about not the tyranny of the or, it's this or that, but rather the genius of the and. And it is a genius of the and, holding on to yourself and holding on to the relationship. Again, there is much more there, but I will leave it at that at the moment, and encourage you to read the book or take the course. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
You have a few more hands up if you like.
Yes, Paula.
Hey, how are you? Nice to be with you guys. I'm from Brazil, and I'm very, very interested in the course. I am following your work, Dr. Tal, for a couple of years ago. I've been with you here in Brazil once in a master class or something in Shopping JK. And I'd like to know, this new group will start this week, right? The lives is like this life, the weekly lives that we are going to have.
Yes. So what happens in the live webinar is I always start. It's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes. It's recorded, so you can be there live, or you don't have to. I always start with some reflections, something that happened during the week or something that I thought about, new study that came out, but a mini lecture. It could be 15, 20 minutes. And then for another hour plus, we have conversations and people bring up questions, whether it's about a workshop that they're creating for a business. And, if I have some tips around that, or whether it's about a gridlock that they're in, whether it's with their partner or, something with their, teenage son. So what amazes, I love those weekly meetings, absolutely love those weekly meetings, because every week different topics come up. And what's amazing that happens there is that, as Carl Rogers, the psychologist, said, what is most personal is most general. And people very often, not always, but very often bring up very personal issues. But it's amazing how many people on the call actually connect to it and how relevant it is to their lives. So, so that's what happens during those live webinars that, again, are recorded. You can watch it or not watch it, whenever you want.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's 1 year course, right? With
weekly
content and weekly lives and the retreats.
Yes, and yes, and
in one word, Tal, in one word, it's yes. In 2 words, it's
no.
Not necessarily.
No, it's not necessarily.
Sort of.
It is 1 year because the course is comprised of pre-recorded lectures on a weekly structure that is going throughout the first year of study. And then you go through the entire material throughout the first year. And then you have exercises alongside those lectures, again, on a weekly structure. Once the year ends, you keep getting invited to all of the weekly webinars. So it is not 1 year, it is actually lifetime. And you have lifetime access to all of the materials. The materials are built into in 3 depth categories. The first depth category is called GEM, good enough mark. This is what you need to go through in order to earn the certificate. And this is about what you'll have time to go through in the first week of those first year. And then you have the GEM Plus and the GEM Plus Plus, which holds enormous amount of content, exercises, videos, reading, a lot of materials about happiness, that research, and that will take you a lot of time to go through. And then for probably what our alumni and students are doing, they drill down to the GEM Plus and the GEM Plus Plus after the year ends to the subject that they are most interested in. So it's way beyond the first year. The first year will get you through the basic material and throughout the entire course.
And after this year, we have also the opportunity to be with you guys in the retreats.
Yes.
Yes. Every time.
Always.
We wouldn't miss it. You see, this is also our favorite part. And just to go back, so the retreats are for a lifetime. We have in our upcoming Mexico retreat, and also in now that I think about it, last week in Evian, we have students who just joined, and we have graduates who graduated 2 years ago, in our first cohort. And hopefully 20 years from now, when we have retreats, the people from the first cohort will come as well. So it's lifetime. And the second thing, you can go through the program in a year. That's the minimum. You can't go any faster than that. But you can also go through it in 2 years. And you can go through it 3 times if you want, every year or every 3 years to go through it each time at a deeper level, as Yuval mentioned. So that's why it's yes and more. Yes, it's a year-long program. It's a lifetime program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Anila.
Hi. I already enrolled in the program, but my question relates to that fact that how to bring the happiness on organization level. The reason why I'm asking that is because I am executive and business coach, and I work a lot with corporation and business. And I would be interested to know your approach, how I could offer these topics to the organization. Okay, they are becoming now more aware about well-being and mental and being happy in the working environment, not toxic relationship. But I would be interested to know a little bit before I start the program, because I already enrolled, to know how you have the approach for business, organization, or corporation.
Good. Yeah, great question, Anila. And so first of all, welcome. I'm glad you joined us. What you will find is that every week, I'm not exaggerating here, every week, every topic that we introduce, you will find something that you'll be able to take and apply in an organization. Just like every week, you'll be able to take something and apply to your personal life. Because, as I often point out when I get questions on the webinar, the question is, what do you listen for? What do you focus on? Where would you like to apply it? Because you can apply one idea in different domains. So let me give you a very general answer now to your question. We introduce the SPIRE model. The SPIRE model includes spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional well-being. And then we elaborate, we dig deep into each of these elements. So spiritual is about meaning, it's about being mindful, present. Physical is about nutrition, exercise, recovery. Then intellectual is about curiosity, it's about learning. The relational is about relationships, it's about kindness, generosity, and emotional is about learning to deal with painful emotions as well as cultivating pleasurable emotions. Each one of these SPIRE elements, you can have a workshop around it. Just last week, I think, I gave a whole workshop just on finding a sense of meaning and purpose at work, a whole workshop just on that idea. Now, that is just part of, it's not even the whole, it's just part of spiritual well-being. And it could have been a semester-long course on meaning and purpose. And if you go into the GEM, the good enough mark, well, you have a workshop. If you go into the GEM++, you have 3 months worth of material just around this topic. Or you can teach purpose in 15 minutes, introduce one study that the workplace can apply. But that's one example. Let's go to emotional well-being, because I just addressed it a few minutes ago. You can teach the idea of the permission to be human. In organizations, it's extremely relevant. There are a lot of studies that show how managers and leaders that give space to their emotions are actually much better leaders. They're more authentic. They connect better. They're more productive, more creative. They're more energetic. So this is just around the permission to be human, which is a small part of emotional well-being. Another part of emotional well-being, for example, is gratitude. Yes. And it turns out that employees who focus on one thing, not 3, 5, one thing that they made progress on during the day, are more productive, more creative, not to mention their job satisfaction goes up. So, this is a topic that can be introduced. Again, there are countless topics. As I said, every week you will find another topic, and I'm happy to take this, much as I always offer our students. I give an answer, which will be, let's say, 10 minutes in the webinar, but I always invite them to then get in touch with me, and I send them material that, over the years I've created around, whether it's, your topic of management, or it could be, child rearing, or whatever topic it is, so we can go much deeper than, the 10 or 15 minutes that that we have for it in the webinar.
Thank you. Exciting to go through the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Anila.
I'm getting some private messages in Spanish, and as you know, I managed to read them and answer, but it's an opportunity for me to say the course is delivered in English, but it is also delivered in fully in other languages as well. So, Tal speaks English, but it will be subtitles to different languages. So we have Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, Japanese, and Hebrew. So far, working on the next
More to come.
More to come. This is to serve students from more than 70 countries now. Now you have another hand.
Good. Esther.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. I'm back here. Hi. I wanted to ask you a question. I think in my experience as a therapist and, you know, as a community Rebbitzin, I have come to see over the years how knowledge is so important in the relationship. The challenge is, I'm a Brazilian living in England, and I find that the emotional intelligence in a couple's ability to see each other's place in terms of overcoming a gridlock is hindered by the lack of understanding or the cultural lack of acceptance of the emotional openness. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah. You know, this, Esther, this opens a whole new topic that I think is important actually to address now. So I'm grateful to you for bringing it up. When we talk about happiness, we are always talking about it on 3 levels. The top level is the universal, which is common to all of us. Everyone, everywhere, at all time has, you know, has looked for meaning. We need a sense of meaning and purpose in life. Everyone needs physical exercise. It's part of our constitution, you know, our God-given, evolutionary given. We need exercise for well-being. Everyone needs to learn and to grow, one thing or another, but we all have an innate sense of curiosity. So there are some universals. At the same time, there are also cultural needs. And that's different in England than it is in Brazil, than it is in the US or Japan, or Nigeria. You know, there are cultural differences that are real. Because in one place, you know, the nature of relationships is, you know, let's say in the workplace. Yeah, they're intimate and you can talk about anything. In another, there is a real hierarchical distinction. It depends on culture. Not better or worse, it's different. And then you have, beyond the universal and the cultural, you have the personal. And the personal, it means that even someone who, you know, who lives in Sao Paulo, even in the same neighborhood, even in the same household, they still have different things that make them happy. They have different needs, desires. You know, 2 people living in the same neighborhood in Lagos have different needs, different desires. So you have the universal, you have the cultural, and you have the personal. For the universal and the cultural, we have research. And by the way, as part of the course, you'll get a lot of research at the universal and the cultural level. When it comes to the personal, that's not about research, that's about me-search. Which is why a very important part of our course is looking within. It's doing a lot of journal work. And, you know, you may be familiar with the work of Karen Horney, who's, you know, one of my personal heroes. She was a student of Freud and broke away from him because she said Freud was focusing too much on the dark and we need to focus more on the light. You know, that's positive psychology in a nutshell for you. And and one of her most important books is called Self-Analysis. And she said, yeah, therapy is great, but we can get so much, so we can go so deep through self-analysis. And she talks about journaling, and we talk a lot about journaling as part of our course, and we do it. Now, within a relationship, we need to take into consideration the universal. And the universal is, you want the relationship to last, you want love and lust to last, you need emotional openness. That's universal. It's the same everywhere. It has always been the same. At the same time, there are cultural differences. And again, if you're a Brazilian married to a Brit, or a Nigerian married to a Chinese, yeah, there are cultural differences there that are very important to explore and to talk about as part of resolving gridlocks. Because by talking about it, by delving deeply, you get to know each other better, knowing and being known. And then you have to go deeper, because not everyone from Brazil and everyone from England, fits into a certain archetype, and, that's how you resolve all. No, you're different. And therefore, what you need is further to explore yourself and to explore the relationship together. That's all part of resolving gridlocks. An inevitable part, knowing and being known to yourself and to your partner. It's an inevitable part of learning relationships, growing relationships, lasting, flourishing relationships.
Yes, thank you for that. I absolutely agree. We're celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary this year, so
Wow.
I identify,
Good
with everything you say. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Esther.
One of the questions in the chat before you take another hand is
Yes.
how to be a student of your program. You go to www.happinessstudies.academy. This is our website. You'll find there the online certificate, all of the material, including the syllabus, all of the information that we talked about here is there. And also on the bottom of that page, you'll have 2 forms to register. One is for 1 payment, and the other is for 10 payments, which are equal payments. We allow that as well. happinessstudies.academy. If you have any questions or something that you still want to know about the program after this call, after this talk, then you can write to info@happinessstudies.academy, and you'll get all of the information from us as well. We'll answer all of your questions. So it's happinessstudies.academy, info@happinessstudies.academy as an email. You have that in the chat as well. You can take another hand.
Great. Marie.
Well, thank you very much for everything. I'd like you to share a little bit about guilt. Well, that's a very important topic.
All right. Let's talk about guilt. So first of all, when you talk about painful emotions in general, and guilt is a painful emotion, as is shame, as is sadness. They always have a purpose, whether it's God or nature. We were created in a way that every one of our emotions has a purpose. The thing, though, is that it can also be misused or abused. So what is the purpose of guilt? Well, guilt is a moral emotion. Imagine if we didn't feel guilt when we hurt someone. Imagine if we didn't feel guilt when we were in some way immoral. That wouldn't be a good thing. What you have is a psychopath. The psychopath doesn't experience guilt. By the way, I was just watching a movie yesterday it's called SAS, which is really a very powerful movie about psychopaths. They have no guilt, and God help us, really God help us, if more people were such. So guilt is an important moral emotion. The problem is, as is the case with just about every painful emotion, is that it can be misused and abused. And we can experience guilt over things that they don't deserve to be felt guilt about. For example, very often, I talked earlier about abuse. Children who are abused or adults who are abused blame themselves for it. And then it's misplaced. And that just contributes to sustaining the abuse. Now, with children, very often they don't have a choice. But sometimes adults remain in an abusive relationship. They feel guilt about what they're doing to provoke their partner or the abusive individual. And then that has obviously, negative long-term effects. So again, what we need to do here is to understand the universal. The universal guilt is a natural human emotion. We all experience it. We need to understand the cultural. There are different cultures, and here a lot of it has to do with religion that look at guilt or teach guilt in a different way. And finally, probably most importantly, the personal. I need to look within. Is the guilt that I'm feeling a result of really something wrong that I'm doing? Should I mend my ways? Or is it unjustified? And am I just actually worsening the situation by tolerating the guilt? Now, I can experience the guilt and still choose to act against it. I can experience envy and choose to act against it. I can be envious of my best friend and still choose to help her. And in the same way, I can experience the guilt and then see that this is not justified and not warranted and leave or do whatever is necessary. But again, to look at guilt, to accept it, it's universal. We all experience it at times. It's fine. The cultural, what was my upbringing? What did my upbringing teach me about guilt, and how is it affecting me? And finally, where am I in my particular situation? Is the guilt justified? Am I acting in the right way? Whether it's succumbing to the guilt or going against the guilt. And that comes from the me search, not the research.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie.
Maybe a last hand of Diana.
Diana.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I would like to understand how is a narcissistic person in a romantic relationship. You have mentioned a psychopath before, but I don't think they are in the same degree.
It's different, yes.
But I would like to understand, and when the person needs to know that it's necessary medication, or how to can be this cure or heal. Thank you.
Good. So two things, Diana. First of all, it's it's a question that deserves much more than I'll give it. But let me just very briefly say, the first thing I want to say, the course in happiness studies, it's not a therapy course. I always emphasize it to my students, and I say to them, unless you're already a therapist, you won't become a therapist through the happiness studies. At the same time, a lot of the content that we teach, as I said earlier about focusing on business, a lot of the content that we teach is very relevant to the therapist. And in fact, every class will be able to find something that is relevant, but it doesn't make you a therapist. And a narcissist needs to be treated by a therapist, not by a graduate of the Happiness Studies Academy. Now, having said that, let me say a few things about narcissism. My research, actually my PhD work, was on self-esteem. And people often ask me, so how do you measure self-esteem reliably? And I say, you can measure it reliably through questionnaires, and you can measure it by looking at the person's brain. So we can see whether a person is confident or has low self-esteem by looking at their brain. Now, usually you find high correlation between what they say, your response to a question, how high is your self-esteem, or are you confident, and what their brain actually looks like, except for in the case of narcissists. When it comes to narcissists, what you find when you ask them, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how high is your self-esteem when, 1 is extremely low and 10 is extremely high? They will say 11. Extremely high plus. However, when you look at the narcissist's brain, what you find is extremely low levels of self-esteem. In other words, narcissism is a defense mechanism for low self-esteem. It's them trying to hide the fact that they actually don't esteem themselves, that they lack confidence. And therefore you find this disparity, this disconnect between what they say and what actually exists, which makes it very difficult to help narcissists, because narcissists don't think they need help. If I have low self-esteem, the reason why I did my research on self-esteem is because one thing didn't make sense to me. And that is, how could it be that, I was a good student, I was a good athlete, I had good relationships, and I got, compliments from, my parents are, warm and complimenting, and friends, and yet I had low self-esteem. So I looked for help. And for me, what I do best is research. So I went and did research on it to study this topic. And that's where, I discovered about, narcissists and measuring their self-esteem. But a narcissist wouldn't go and look for that answer because they don't have a problem in their eyes. And if you try to help them, wow, you're a threat to them. Because what they're trying so hard to do is to hide the fact that they have low self-esteem. That's why they act as they do. As suddenly you're challenging that, that's a problem. And that's why you need a highly skilled individual, a therapist, to try to help them. And I'm saying try because it's not always possible. Sometimes their defense is so strong, the walls are so strong that it's impossible to penetrate them. And sometimes it is. It's certainly worth the try. But to do it, you really need to understand the nature of narcissism. And there are therapists who specialize in this disorder. And they're the ones who are best suited to try to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Okay, Tal, I think we'll end with that. Just to remind you something that was in the chat, I don't know if you missed, but for the participants of this webinar, we have a special discount for the Certificate in Happiness Studies, which is $500 discount. You simply use the code LiveWebinar, all capital letters, and you'll get your discount for participating in this webinar. And basically that's it. Tal?
Just again, every time and again, we're in our 14th cohort, right, Yuval?
Yeah.
Every time I get the butterflies in my belly, and I can't wait to meet new fellow journeyers, whether it's the weekly webinar, whether it's through emails, and of course in the in-person live retreats. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your questions, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you all for joining. Thank you for taking the time being with us today. Have a wonderful day and week.